Hey everyone, ready for something different? We're going deep on a book, uh, G.I. Gurdjieff, The Herald of Coming Good.
Hmm.
Yeah, even big Gurdjieff fans, even they find this book a little mysterious.
Right. It's kind of a strange one.
Yeah, it's like part personal philosophy, part like call to action,
Yeah.
all kind of wrapped up in Gurdjieff's style.
One of the things that I find really fascinating about this one is how he approached publishing it.
Oh yeah?
He sold it on a sliding scale.
What?
Yeah, from 8 to 108 francs, and you had
Yeah.
to register and fill out a questionnaire. It's like he
Oh.
was choosing his audience almost.
Yeah, he wasn't playing by the normal rules at all. And then on top of that, you have this thing about Gudgie's 21 years of artificial life.
Right.
Like he had this program, he even swore an oath. Like, what was he doing?
It's fascinating, isn't it? This actually really gets into one of the core things about Gurdjieff. He called it a mania to understand the meaning of life.
Okay.
And it led him down all these crazy paths.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
I mean, we're talking like ancient Asian sciences. And get this, he was a healer of vices at one point.
Wait, so he was like a therapist for bad habits.
Kind of. Yeah, you could say that.
Wow.
Using his knowledge to help people overcome these struggles. But at the same time, he's observing their subconscious.
Right.
You know,
Gathering info.
yeah, he's always trying to understand human nature. And so he actually had this concept of our psyches are split into three parts:
Okay.
intellectual, emotional, and what he called instinctive motor.
Mm.
And he saw modern man as like three men in one,
Wow.
rarely in harmony,
Interesting.
which he thought kept us from reaching our potential. I think
Being
we've all felt that, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like being pulled in different directions by your head and your heart and your gut.
Exactly.
Totally.
It's exhausting, so what do we do about that?
Yeah. So how do we fix that? What did he say?
Well, this is where this Institute for Man's Harmonious Development comes in. This was his project to create a space for people to work towards a more, an integrated and conscious existence.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it faced some serious setbacks,
Yeah.
especially during the World Wars.
Oh, that's a shame because it's interesting because like his critique of modern education from what I was reading in like the prospectus,
Right.
it feels so relevant even today, you know?
Absolutely.
He argues that we're just creating all these unbalanced people and they're
Mhm.
totally disconnected from who they really are.
And his language is so powerful, he's talking about how modern man is not the master of himself.
Mm-hmm.
We're driven by all these external stimuli, not making conscious choices.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we're just reacting,
Mm.
not living.
So how did he go from running this institute to being an author?
Well, there's a crazy story there.
Oh, yeah.
Gurdjieff was in a serious car accident,
Oh, wow.
and it left him bedridden for a while. It was during this recovery that he shifted from writing short scenarios to working on his masterpiece, Beelzebub's Tales, to his grandson.
Okay.
And so this book, The Herald, is kind of an introduction to that.
Interesting. So what about these scenarios? Like what were those? What were those like?
They were these short, like, allegorical pieces,
Okay.
often inspired by everyday events.
Okay.
So, for example, there was a popular film at the time called Two Brothers.
Oh, wow.
That gave him the idea for a scenario called The Three Brothers,
Okay.
which, if you think about it, relates back to his idea of the three parts of the psyche. He's finding inspiration everywhere.
So speaking of inspiration, his whole approach to publishing is so out there.
Well, totally.
Right.
It's not conventional at all.
Not at all.
So he had this three-tiered system. The first series of books publicly available. The second series you could access through special readings. The third series, you had to prove your worthiness to even get a glimpse.
It's like a secret society or something.
I know, right? It's like he was protecting the knowledge,
Yeah.
making sure it only reached the right people.
Okay, so I'm dying to know, how did he determine worthiness?
Well, it wasn't about like rituals or anything.
Okay.
It was really about, he had two categories of people. There were people who were trained in his monastery and people who were from his community.
Okay.
And he had these 5 criteria to see if someone was ready.
Okay, what were they?
So the first one was that they had to have shown evidence of a solid foundation built during their younger years. The second one was that they had natural inclinations towards things like compassion, humility, and a healthy awareness of their own mortality.
Okay.
He thought these qualities were essential for real growth.
That makes sense. Okay, what were the other 3?
Well, the third one was about the ability to overcome weaknesses
Okay.
that were rooted in their upbringing. And fourth, he considered their life circumstances and their future prospects. Were they actually in a position to apply his teachings?
Right, to actually use this information.
Exactly. And to make a positive impact.
Okay.
And then lastly, he looked for a certain level of self-awareness,
Okay.
particularly recognizing their own limitations and the desire to move beyond those limitations.
Those are some pretty high standards.
They are. They are.
It makes you stop and think, like, where do I stand on those,
I know, right?
What stands out to you about those?
They're definitely challenging.
Yeah.
But to really understand why those were so important to him, you have to look at this observation he had about human nature.
Okay.
It was a really surprising one. He noticed that the more kind and benevolent he acted toward the people, the more negativity he received in return.
That's so weird.
It's counterintuitive.
Yeah, totally. Why would they respond that way?
Well, he came to believe that vanity played a huge role in these misunderstandings.
Oh.
He saw it as this, sneaky force that just distorts our perceptions and fuels conflict.
Okay.
So it wasn't that people were being, intentionally ungrateful or mean-spirited. It was that their vanity was being triggered somehow.
So it's not about the action, it's about how it's perceived.
Yes, exactly.
Through our own ego.
Yes, he actually started conducting experiments to test this out.
Oh.
He would deliberately apply patience and non-interference, even when people were behaving badly towards him, just to see what would happen.
Wow, so he's experimenting on people like a mad scientist.
Well, not in a harmful way, more like he was this curious observer
Right.
trying to understand,
Right.
trying to crack the code of human behavior. One of his most revealing experiments involved something totally unexpected.
Yeah.
Mortgaging his estates.
Wait, how does mortgaging property connect to understanding human behavior?
I know, it's a strange one, right?
Yeah.
So he was in a moment of what he called extravaganza, and he decided to handle this mortgage process in this really unconventional way.
You're okay.
He hired multiple offices and agents instead of just using one lawyer.
So he's making it way more complicated than it needs to be. What's he hoping to learn by doing that?
He called it an elucidatory experiment.
Okay.
By interacting with all these different people in the context of this financial transaction, he was creating a real-world scenario where he could observe their behavior when money was on the line.
Yeah.
So he's getting this raw, unfiltered look
Interesting.
at human nature.
So he's creating a controlled environment to see how people react under pressure.
Yeah, and what did he discover?
What did he discover?
Well, it wasn't exactly encouraging. Remember that scruple of conscience that we talked about? Well, he found it alarmingly absent
Really?
in many of the people he encountered. It wasn't that they were bad people,
Right.
but they seemed to operate without that internal compass.
Wow. So all these people he dealt with, they lacked a basic sense of right and wrong.
He believed it pointed to a wider problem, a lack of focus on developing these essential psychic factors in the younger generation.
Yeah.
And it really fueled his desire to establish these institutes that would train spiritual instructors.
Interesting. So it sounds like he's going from individual development to more of a societal transformation.
Yes, exactly.
But what about his own financial losses? He just shrugged it off.
He actually had a plan to recoup the funds.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he mentions in the book that he intends to recover the money from those who wronged him during this whole process and use it to establish a fund for his work.
Oh, wow.
It's like turning their lack of scruple of conscience into a resource.
Classic Gurdjieff's.
I know, right?
Always turning things around.
Right.
So he ends the book announcing that he's going to rebuild the gymnasium at the Chateau du Prieur, the site of his former institute.
Yes.
So even after shutting down the institute, he was still dedicated to creating this space for learning and growth.
It seems that way.
But what did he mean by these spiritual instructors? What role did he see them playing?
That is a great question. And it really takes us into some of the most profound and challenging aspects of his teachings, which we will dive into in the next part of our look at the Herald of Coming Good.
Looking forward to it.
So these spiritual instructors, they weren't meant to be like gurus or authority figures.
Right.
He saw them more as guides, helping people navigate his system and providing support on their journey, their individual journeys of self-development.
Okay, so it's like he was trying to create this lineage, passing on his work. But what did this work actually entail?
Right.
What were those essential psychic factors?
It's complex, his system, but at its core is this idea that we are, as humans, we're asleep. We're operating on autopilot,
Oh, yeah.
driven by our conditioning and our habitual patterns.
Yeah.
Gurdjieff thought that through conscious effort and specific practices,
Mm.
we could wake up,
Okay.
to a higher level of awareness and develop these qualities like self-observation, non-identification, and a more objective understanding of ourselves and the world.
Okay, so it's not just about personal growth, then. It's about a fundamental shift in consciousness,
Yes,
individually and collectively.
exactly.
But how do we even begin to wake up? Like,
Right.
what are the steps? What did he say?
Well, he stressed self-knowledge as like the foundation.
Okay.
He wanted people to really understand their own mechanics, their patterns of thought and emotion and behavior.
Yeah.
He thought that once you see them clearly,
Yeah.
once you see them, you can start to work with them,
Right.
transform them into something more conscious, more intentional.
So becoming like the observer of your own mind.
Yes.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It is. It is. It's not always easy,
Okay.
but he offered different practices to help this process.
Oh, okay. Like what?
He really emphasized the importance of attention, being present in each moment, not lost in thought about the past or worries about the future.
Oh.
And he also, he advocated for specific physical exercises and movements to help people develop a greater sense of body awareness.
It's interesting how he connected the physical and the mental like that.
Right. Recognizing that they're really inseparable.
Where does this book, The Herald, fit into all this? It's so short compared to Beelzebub's Tales.
Yeah, you could see it as like a primer,
Okay.
an introduction to his core ideas,
Okay.
laying the groundwork for his larger system, offering glimpses into his unconventional life and his views on human nature and
Right.
and his vision for a more conscious future.
And it's written in such a personal, engaging style, too, right? It's
Right.
not like
Right.
dry philosophy.
It's very accessible.
Yeah.
And,
He's inviting you into a conversation.
yeah, like he's right there with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, he doesn't shy away from controversy.
Oh, yeah.
He questions the value of altruism, as it's commonly understood.
Wait, really? Why would he critique altruism?
I know, right?
It seems like a positive thing. It's not that he's against helping others.
Okay.
It's more that he wants us to look at our motivations.
Okay.
Remember his observation about receiving negativity when he was kind?
Yeah.
He's suggesting that true altruism, genuine altruism, has to come from inner freedom, not a sense of obligation or a desire to be recognized.
So it's like going deeper beyond the surface level, like developing a deeper understanding of what service really means.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And this ties back to his focus on self-development,
Yeah.
He thought that when we work on ourselves, when we become more conscious,
Yeah.
more whole,
Right.
we become more capable of genuine compassion. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. You have to fill your own cup first. And his system of knowledge where you have to prove yourself to access the higher teachings.
Yes.
That seems connected to this idea of self-development, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He wasn't just throwing information out there
Right.
for anyone to grab,
Oh, yeah.
He wanted to make sure that his teachings were received by those who were ready to work with them,
Yeah.
who were ready to put in the effort.
Right. It's powerful knowledge. You got to respect it.
Exactly. You have to approach it with respect
Yeah.
and a genuine desire to grow.
So it's not just about reading it, it's about living it.
Yes,
Yeah.
about embodying it, integrating it into your life and actions.
And he encouraged his readers to read his work multiple times too, right?
Yes, yes. Each time with a different level of engagement.
Wow.
That's a practice in itself.
Yeah, going deeper each time.
Yeah, cultivating attention, going beyond the surface,
Wow.
and really wrestling with the material.
Yeah.
He wanted his readers to become active participants in their own learning.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, don't just consume this information, engage with it, question it.
Exactly. Let it challenge you
Yeah.
to think differently about yourself, about the world.
And it's clear that he thought this was urgent,
Yes.
like with the coming good. What was he referring to?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
And he doesn't give us any easy answers.
Yeah.
But I think what he's pointing to is a potential future, right?
Okay.
Where humanity could evolve
Okay.
beyond its current state of
Mhm.
of sleepwalking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where we could become more conscious, more compassionate, more in harmony with ourselves and each other
Yeah.
and the planet.
He wasn't naive about the challenges, though, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean,
With the vanity.
yes, I mean, that was huge for him.
Yeah.
It's so deeply ingrained in us.
Yeah. How can we overcome something like that?
Well, It's a key question,
Yeah.
and it's one he really explores
Yeah.
throughout his work.
Yeah.
He thought that vanity, or what he called self-love,
Uh-huh.
was at the root of so many of our problems.
Yeah.
It distorts our perceptions,
Yeah.
fuels our egotism, and keeps us from seeing things clearly.
So how do we combat that? Is there like an antidote?
He didn't offer a simple solution, but he did give us some powerful tools
Yeah.
for self-observation and transformation.
Okay.
He really emphasized this idea of self-remembering, which is,
Mhm.
a state of heightened presence and awareness,
Okay.
where we become more conscious of our thoughts and feelings and actions.
Right.
He thought that this practice could help us see ourselves more objectively and to loosen the grip of the ego.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It is.
Is there anything else in this book that can help us understand this better?
Well, he talks about the importance of intentional suffering.
Okay, hold on. Is he talking about like
No.
self-flagellation?
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
What he's referring to is the conscious choice to face our weaknesses, our fears, and our limitations rather than avoid them.
So like facing our shadow.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Those parts of ourselves that we hide or deny.
Yeah.
And he thought this kind of inner work, as difficult as it is really what leads to real growth.
Okay, so that's where the spiritual instructor comes in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can offer guidance and support, help people navigate that.
It makes sense that he was so careful about who he shared his teachings with.
Right.
But this book, The Herald, is public, right? What would he say to someone reading it today, maybe for the first time?
I think he'd encourage them to approach it with an open mind
Okay.
and a willingness to question their own assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't want anyone to blindly accept his ideas,
Yeah.
He'd want them to engage with them, test them out in their own lives, see if they resonate.
So it's not about becoming a Gurdjieff disciple. It's about using his ideas as a starting point for your own exploration.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wanted to spark a fire in people, awaken a thirst for knowledge and a desire for something more
Than just the everyday.
than just the ordinary. Yes.
Right.
The sleepwalking existence.
It's like he's challenging us to wake up, to take responsibility for our own evolution,
Yes.
and to become more conscious creators of our lives and the world around us.
That brings us back to those spiritual instructors.
Yeah.
They can guide us,
Okay.
support us on that journey of awakening.
So we've talked about self-observation, the challenge of vanity, the importance of this intentional suffering.
Yes.
But how are these spiritual instructors actually trained? Like,
Yeah.
what does that look like?
That's a great question. And it takes us deeper into the heart of his methods and his practices,
Yeah.
which we'll explore in the next part
Okay.
of our look at the Herald of Coming Good.
Okay, so we've talked about these spiritual instructors, but how does someone actually become one? It's not like there's a Gurdjieff University out there.
No, not exactly.
Yeah.
There's no formal degree program or anything like that.
Yeah.
But he did lay out some specific qualities
Oh, wait.
and abilities that he thought were essential for anyone taking on this role. And remember those 5 criteria we discussed?
Oh, you mean like having that solid foundation
Yes.
and the natural inclination towards compassion and being able to overcome weaknesses.
Exactly. Those apply here. But for these instructors, those qualities need to be developed to an even higher level.
Okay.
They have to embody the principles they're teaching,
Yeah.
not just intellectually, but emotionally and behaviorally.
So it's not just about knowledge then. It's about being a living example.
Yes. It's a tall order.
It is, yeah.
And that's why Gurdjieff really emphasized rigorous self-work.
Okay.
He thought that true transformation required a willingness to confront your own limitations, your blind spots, your ego. He even used the term conscious labor to describe it.
What did he mean by conscious labor?
He was talking about engaging in self-development
Okay.
with intention and effort.
Mm.
It's not about just passively reading a book or
Uh-huh.
attending a workshop,
Yeah.
It's about actively working on yourself,
Right.
putting these teachings into practice.
Yeah, like don't just talk the talk.
Exactly.
You walk the walk.
And this conscious labor involved a whole range of practices.
Okay, like what?
Self-observation,
Mhm.
working with your attention,
Yeah.
developing greater body awareness,
Hmm.
cultivating more conscious emotional responses.
Okay, so that's a lot of inner work, but what about the spiritual aspect?
Right. Well,
Where does that fit in?
Gurdjieff's understanding of spirituality wasn't tied to any religion or dogma.
Okay.
He was more interested in the practical aspects of developing higher states of consciousness,
Okay.
what he called awakening.
So it's more about experience than belief.
Exactly. And This awakening involved a shift in perspective,
Okay.
a move away from identifying just with your personality,
Mm-hmm.
your ego,
Right.
to a more expansive sense of self.
So he was pointing to some kind of transcendence then.
Yes, going beyond the limitations of our ordinary minds.
But how do you actually help someone else do that? What tools did he give these spiritual instructors?
He talked about the importance of creating the right conditions for transformation.
Okay.
So this could be things like group work,
Mm.
where people can support each other,
Right.
challenge each other,
Yeah.
as well as specific exercises and practices designed to push people out of their comfort zones.
So not a one-size-fits-all approach.
No, definitely not. Gurdjieff believed each person is unique,
Okay.
and so the path needs to be tailored
Right.
to their needs.
Yeah.
And he stressed the importance of direct transmission.
Okay. What's that?
The idea that some knowledge can only be passed from teacher to student through personal interaction.
Okay, so he really wanted to protect those teachings.
Yes, to make sure they were used responsibly.
But this all sounds pretty intense.
It is.
Who would actually sign up for that?
Well, he was looking for people who were truly committed to their own growth
Yeah.
and had a real desire to help others. It wasn't about followers or building a personality cult.
Yeah.
It was about creating a community
Right.
of seekers,
Yeah.
people willing to challenge themselves,
Yeah.
support each other.
It's pretty amazing to think that there are people out there dedicated to this kind of work.
I know, right?
You know, even with all the chaos in the world, it's pretty inspiring.
It is.
But for someone just starting out who's curious about Gurdjieff, what would you say? Where do they begin?
I'd say start with the Herald of Coming Good,
Yeah.
the good introduction.
Yeah, it gives you a taste of
Yeah.
his style.
And then if you're drawn to it,
Yeah.
you can explore his other writings.
Like Beelzebub's Tales.
Yes, and see if there are groups,
Yeah.
communities, practicing his methods.
So this deep dive has been a really fascinating look at Gurdjieff.
It has.
This unconventional thinker,
Yeah.
we've covered a lot, from his life to his ideas about human nature and this possibility of conscious evolution.
It's a lot.
It is. So why should our listeners care about this?
Because it speaks to something timeless,
Hmm.
universal even.
Yeah.
It's about the search for meaning,
Yeah.
purpose,
Yeah.
the desire to break free from the limitations of
Yeah.
our minds.
Right.
And that longing for a more fulfilling way of being.
Yeah. And even if you don't agree with everything he says, it's definitely thought-provoking.
Absolutely.
It really challenges you
It does.
to look at yourself.
Yes. And the world.
Yeah.
Gurdjieff's work is a call to awaken, really.
Yeah.
To step out of that matrix of conditioning,
Yeah.
become more conscious creators
Yeah.
of our lives.
It's like an invitation to this journey
Yes.
of self-discovery.
And transformation.
Yeah.
And it may not be easy,
No.
but it promises to be rewarding.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the Herald of Coming Good, we're left with this. If Gurdjieff was right, and vanity really is the root of so much suffering, how can we become more aware of it in our own lives?
Right?
And how can we cultivate those good things like compassion, humility, a sense of connection?
Yeah.
Those things that can lead to a better way of being, both for ourselves and